book lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I am here today to talk about some book series I want to be adapted into Netflix TV series. If you didn't know, this is a 7 on Sunday, and I am the host of 7 on Sunday. I will link the GOODREADS page down in the description where you can check it out and you can participate in a topic in the future. It's very funny, I'm like 2 topics behind now and I've filmed for both of them. But other videos just keep on getting in the way of my weekend. I'm either really bad at managing my time or there's just not much time in the week. But I was really excited to do this topic. I was definitely inspired by the fact that Shadow and Bone recently came out, and I knew that I wanted to do this as a future 7 on Sunday topic. Shadow and Bone was a really good adaptation, but also The Witcher was. And so it kind of just proves to me that Netflix are actually doing a pretty good job with discussing these things with the writers of the series or looking at the source material and making the most of it. That's the reason why I'm bringing up Netflix series rather than just a TV series in general, because Netflix are actually doing a good job at adapting material, but also making changes and modifications that still keep the heart and soul of the story, which they did with the Grishaverse and they're doing with the world of The Witcher. And that's what I appreciate a lot, being a book fan of both of those series. I'm very excited to see where their adaptations are going to take us. Pretty much, I want to talk about some book series that I would like to be Netflix blockbusters in the future, that I think that Netflix could pull off as opposed to some other production companies. Like some other production companies, okay, we'll see how they go. I just don't want another Shadowhunters situation. When it comes to these books in particular, I'm a purist. I need to make sure that these books are being adapted well. Without further ado, let's get into the list of books that I want to see adapted by Netflix in particular as a TV series. Not as a movie, TV series. I'm gonna bring up Furyborn by Claire Legrand, and I believe that Netflix could pull this off within 3 seasons because there are a lot of flashbacks and a lot of references to the different kingdoms and the different scenarios. So if you guys don't know, Furyborn follows 2 different queens in 2 different timelines. That's why I think Netflix could do an amazing job with this book series and adapting it to live action, but also make you feel a lot for the characters and make you feel a lot for their situation. And I know that the story isn't necessarily overall satisfying to a lot of people, but honestly, I think that it would have just an even more emotional payoff if we saw it adapted. Kind of reminds me of Netflix's Dark, when the conclusion is kind of heartbreaking, but it definitely does make sense for the story. And I think that as much as a lot of people don't like the ending of this trilogy, it's definitely heartbreaking, but also it makes sense to the story. Therefore, I kind of think if Netflix can pull off a series like Dark, they can pull off a series like Furyborn. In my personal opinion, they are 2 completely different concepts, but they both deal with timelines. And that's why I think that Netflix could pull off this series very well. By the way, if you have not yet watched Dark, I highly recommend it. It's really good. Camilo got me into it and we highly recommend it, and it is completely underrated. But honestly, it wasn't a dragged out show. It was done within perfect timing, and it was done within 3 seasons. This book series right here could be done with the same formula, I'd say. And then I want to mention the Cursebreaker series by Bridget Kemmerer. ACOTAR is going to be adapted by another streaming service, I'm pretty sure. Netflix has an opportunity to take their own Beauty and the Beast retelling if they buy the rights to the Cursebreaker series. Now, I actually mostly want the Cursebreaker series to be adapted because as much as I did enjoy the trilogy, I wanted it to be expanded upon. What I do like about Netflix's series is that even though they have some sort of slow burn to them at times, those slow burns do pay off. I wanted the series to be a bit of a slow burn in a way. I mean, I like this first book in particular, how it has a perfect amount of slow burn, but also a perfect amount of world building. I wish that the rest of the series kept the same pace. I just know that if we're gonna get it adapted by Netflix, they would perfectly pace things out. That's kind of why I hope that if we do get an adaptation, we could get what we didn't get in the last 2 books in the series, which is perfect pacing. I don't hate the last 2 books in the series, but I kind of wish we got perfect pacing and also a lot more closure with some of the characters and some of their romances. And I think that an adaptation could give us that closure. If not, Bridget, please write a spin-off or please write another book in this series, because I just need closure with certain relationships and also with certain characters, and also what happens in the last book. Maybe let's talk about that magical character. Let's talk about them. Now, this was just purely for trash, but also But also, when it comes to this series, I think Netflix in particular would be the perfect streaming service to adapt this, because Netflix ain't really afraid to not be family friendly. This isn't a family friendly book series. The Touch of Darkness / Hades and Persephone series, there is a lot of steam in it, let's just say that. But I think the modern take on the Hades and Persephone myth would be something fascinating to see on the big screen. And also, it's a very bingeable book, therefore I think that it would kind of be very easy to binge while watching it on Netflix. I do have to mention that I do want to see more wholesomeness between Hades and Persephone, because yes, of course, their fates are aligned and they're meant to be together, and that is pretty much prominent in this book. And I kind of just wish we had more wholesome moments in the first book when they're kind of getting to know each other, because we know that they're endgame. I just personally want more wholesomeness between the two, because it just balances out a relationship better. Like, yes, of course, they've got their arguments because, you know, they're a couple, and like every good couple argues. They have their steamy moments because, yes, every good couple has their steamy moments, but the wholesomeness factor, not completely there yet. I want it all, essentially. I want a good formula, because that's how we're all gonna believe that they have like a good relationship dynamic, you know? I want to bring up A Darker Shade of Magic by Victoria Schwab. Now, the rights to A Darker Shade of Magic were purchased by Sony years ago. It's actually meant to be a movie. I don't want that to happen. I don't want this to be a movie series. I want this to be a bingeable Netflix TV series, and the reason why I do is because I want it to be perfect, and I don't want it to be reduced in runtime, because this world is so complex, and I think that you need a lot more time than 2 hours to flesh out what's happening, especially in the first book, because you're literally world building. So essentially, it's going to be a situation where you're going to have to spend that entire movie trying to set up a franchise, but what if the franchise doesn't do well? At least you have more time with a Netflix series to do that. Also, it's gonna be a fun, bingeable time, and I don't know if I would trust Sony with this property unless they partner with Netflix. We'll see. But what I do know is that this series in particular deserves a Netflix adaptation. Then I so badly want to see the David series adapted by Netflix, because I think that it deserves a high budget adaptation that is not necessarily reduced by runtime. It needs to be a fully fleshed out series. It's just that much of a vast, expansive world. Also, you get to spend more time with the characters. I personally would just love it if we had a good, fully fleshed out Netflix series that's kind of similar to The Witcher and Shadow and Bone. With this series, there's a lot of world building, and that's, I think, what I'm emphasizing a lot in this video. It's that with Netflix series, they do pretty well. If they're adapting a book, they do pretty well with their world building, and they get the watcher to kind of understand the world. Obviously, if they've got some good source material to back it up, and this is some good source material. So like, let this back you up, Netflix. And the next book series that I would like to see adapted by Netflix would be like more of a young adult teenage series that I think that Netflix could pull off better. Like, you know, people from CW or Freeform, like, I don't care about those adaptations, but Netflix would do pretty well with Crave by Tracy Wolf. Now, the reason why I want them to do Crave is because Netflix would really sell us on the dark academia vibes that this gives off. That's pretty much the reason why I want them to adapt it in particular, because yes, of course, we could get CW to do it, or we could get Freeform to do it. This kind of seems like one of those book series that would be up their alley, but I would much prefer Netflix to do it. I mean, Netflix doesn't necessarily need something that's similar or similar sounding to Twilight, but that being said, there aren't even just vampires in here. There are witches, there are dragons, there are all sorts of paranormal creatures, and the reason why I want Netflix to do this is because they would have the budget to do it. I want this to be picked up by Netflix so bad. Then we're gonna get some Australian representation here. I want The Prison Healer to be adapted by Netflix. Guys, if you don't know, this book and this book series is my most recent obsession. I love The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni, and I am just honestly so proud of an author from my country who just came through with an amazing young adult fantasy. I love this world so much, and I love the concept, I love the story, and I love the narration. And I think that the narration would translate perfectly as a Netflix series, especially with all the twists and turns that happen in the series. I think it's destined for Netflix, and if it ever does become a Netflix series, then we can just come back to this video and like think past G-Swiz. I really want faith it will be adapted, but it will be adapted in the best way possible. So The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni, I really want it to happen because it's such a good series. I hope none of you guys are sleeping on it. It's a really good release. Please read it. The second last book series that I want adapted by Netflix would be Stolen Songbird, or like the Malediction trilogy by Danielle L. Jensen. When I say that this is Danielle L. Jensen's most underrated series, I mean it. It actually is. I love this series so much. I don't see it being talked about enough on this platform, or like on any platform for that matter. It is just so good. The world is amazing and it's expansive, and I think that it would be a perfect world to adapt as a Netflix series. To be honest, I kind of do think that a lot of people are kind of turned off from the series because it follows a mythical creature that they're not used to following. Trolls. It follows trolls. But if you've been reading all of those Fae books, you will love this series. It is made for people who like the Fae books that are currently out right now and are trending, you know, like Court of Thorns and Roses or the Cruel Prince trilogy. It caters to those readers. Trust me when I say it, it does. You know what? It's been how many months? 4 or 5 months since I've read the series, and I still think about it. And I just want it to get the love that it deserves. So, Netflix adaptation, please. Thank you. And the final series that I do have to bring up here will probably come to no surprise to a lot of people. I mean, not too many people have actually talked about them wanting an adaptation, but I do want to see a Netflix adaptation. Specifically, a Netflix series adaptation for this book series, and that, my friends, is the Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This book series would actually make a perfect Netflix TV show. First of all, because it's like thick, and also I think the themes in this series would best be for a Netflix TV show, because no one really wants to adapt some really high version of people hurting each other. Trying to describe this without getting demonetized, obviously. But like, not every parent wants their children watching this just casually on a Monday night on a regular network TV channel. I mean, obviously it's like the kid's choice and whatnot, but yeah, no, I think that in order for it to be adapted very well, it shouldn't be adapted like a young adult novel, because it's not necessarily young adult, it's new adult. Netflix would be the perfect place for like pretty much every new adult novel, because they don't restrict these things when it comes to their adaptations. They don't restrict how much is being shown. It kind of works. And I think that if there's gonna be any adaptation of the Blood and Ash series, it's gonna be done by Netflix. I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at GSwizzleBooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/GSwizzle. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it into double. Started out with half and I flipped it into double.